Tell me a story.
What story would you like?
In 1596, losing a kid to the plague wasn't a tragedy. It was a Tuesday. But Chloé Zhao doesn't want history. She wants a 21st century therapy session in period costume. She's giving us grief porn in an era besieged with grief and turns the trauma into a career pivot for a dad and a spectacle for the mum. It's an exercise in emotional manipulation that doesn't trust the past to be sad enough without a modern lens. So we have to ask, is this movie Hamnet? Is it Hamnot? Or is it...
Where is it? Where's the rum ham? $69, dudes!
There is a moment in Hamnet where the world stops, not for the king or a kingdom, but for an 11-year-old boy. We then watch the parents, William and Agnes Shakespeare, descend into a visceral, soul-crushing agony that feels intensely recognisable to a modern audience. But here's the uncomfortable truth. In 1596, child mortality was not a rare tragedy, it was a statistical certainty. Nearly 1 in 3 children failed to reach adulthood. Historians like Philip Perez once argued that Elizabethan parents maintained a necessary indifference to their offspring, a psychological armour against the inevitable. Yet the film Hamnet rejects the armour entirely. It presents the loss of William Shakespeare's only son not as a common occurrence of the era, but as a singular, world-ending cataclysm. We watch Agnes Shakespeare collapse under a weight of grief that looks strikingly like a 21st century nervous breakdown. The film asks us to marvel at how her father's shattered heart could eventually mend itself into the shape of Hamlet. It frames William Shakespeare's creativity as the ultimate product of pain, but in doing so, it risks creating a hierarchy of heartbreak. We're taught to find meaning in Shakespeare's grief because it gave us to be or not to be. But what of Robert down the street? He lost his son to the same plague, and he went fishing. What about Fanny? She buried her daughter and woke up the next morning to knead dough because the village still needed bread. By focusing on the productive grief of a genius, Hamlet suggests that art is the only worthy vessel for trauma. It ignores the quiet, unrecorded stoicism of the thousands of Roberts and Fannys who didn't have a stage. They just had a life to get on with. Their grief wasn't lesser because it was silent, it was just undocumented. Hamlet doesn't ask us to empathise with the past, it asks the past to audition for our modern sensibilities. It's a stunning achievement in grief porn, a film that knows exactly how to make you cry, but doesn't seem to trust that the truth of the Shakespeare's loss was enough to do it on its own. Director Chloé Zhao has successfully translated the stoic, resilient and mundane world of the 1590s into a sleek, modern language of individualised trauma. And the final mic drop comes when the opening chords of Max Richter's Dead Kid anthem On the Nature of Daylight begin to swell in the final act of Hamnet. The film officially gives up on being a historical drama and becomes a sadness greatest hits compilation. We heard these exact same notes as Amy Adams watched her daughter wither in Arrival, as DiCaprio's wife disintegrated in Shutter Island. By recycling the same music used for every Dead Kid montage of the last decade, Zhao isn't honouring Hamlet Shakespeare, triggering a Pavlovian response. It's the cinematic equivalent of a laugh track, telling us exactly when to leak tears, so we don't have to bother engaging with the actual muddy reality of the 1500s. There's a staggering irony at the centre of Hamnet. The film goes at length to show us the raw, agonising genesis of the greatest play in the English language, a work that redefined the human soul as complex, haunting, and terrifyingly original, yet the film itself is anything but that. We're handed a Grief 101 playbook, GIF wrapped in saccharin. We are told we're watching the birth of a masterpiece, but we're being fed a case study in audience manipulation. While the real Shakespeare was arguably trying to invent a new way for humans to be sad on stage, this film is content to use every pre-packaged cinematic trick in the book to ensure our tears are shed exactly on cue. It's the ultimate story of channeling grief and turns it into the ultimate exercise in an emotional paint by numbers. Ultimately, it's a beautifully shot movie, expertly acted piece of emotional engineering. You cannot fault the performances across the board. The child actors perform admirably. The overall standout though is Jessie Buckley as the crippled by grief Agnes. Director Chloé Zhao frames and films the movie expertly, punctuating interior scenes, forest scenes with these wonderful natural light. In terms of the awards race, I wouldn't begrudge the film its technical flowers, production design, costume. The world looks lived in. The casting is equally sharp, the kids are hauntingly effective, and Jessie Buckley, again, remains one of the few actors who can make a trauma loop feel almost human. But let's be clear, awarding this picture directional writing, that'd be a tragedy in its own right. And as for best music, let's not award a recycled cheat code for emotions. That'd be a bridge too far, even for Hollywood.
Where's the rum ham?
Would you like to know more?